Good morning, everyone. I love memes and comics. This looks like an old meme that has been repurposed to be new again. Here's Justin Trudeau walking around a field of rakes, Sideshow Bob style, and he says, finally the polls are saying we've recovered from lav scam, and he's about to step on the Vice Admiral Mark Norman debacle rake. But I think if it were current, it would say we scam or we scandal or something to that effect. And here's a meme that is always in style. It's the happy dog thing, having coffee, and he says, and he's having coffee in a burning down house, of course, and he says, this is fine, and I feel like this is apropos for our current financial situation as compared to ourselves only a few months ago. I mean, at the beginning of 2020, we had a $20 billion deficit, and people were upset about that. They thought it was a lot of money. Trudeau was saying that we were on the way up. Well, I think we were on the way up to a $30 billion deficit, and the idea was more spending is better, and Trudeau was not going to balance the budget really until 2040, I think was the last estimate of the balanced budget that I saw. So originally Trudeau campaigned on a balanced budget by 2019, and here we are after the crisis of COVID, and we've got 3 times the spending of the Second World War. Right? If you adjust the spending for the Second World War, which was $10 billion, and that's roughly $100 billion in today's dollars, and if you look at that, we spent $300 billion and more. And well, here's our new minister of finance, and I think it's funny in this clip. He's the reporter, I think, is David Aiken, and he says, he doesn't say put your finance minister hat on, but basically he says, as the finance minister, I'd like to ask you a question, and I think it's hilarious. I mean, number one, I've been saying, if you were competent to be the deputy prime minister or competent to be the finance minister, you would know that you can't be both finance minister and deputy prime minister. You can't be the finance minister and the prime minister. I'm pretty sure. I mean, maybe you can be if you're Paul Martin, right? If you've got you're very long in the tooth, but even Paul Martin didn't do that, right? He was the finance minister and very popular one. And when he took over prime ministership, he didn't retain the finance minister mantle. Right? As far as I know, he had his own finance minister. I'll have to look it up. Hold on. It was good old Ralph Goodell. All right, Minister of Finance. So he didn't retain that. He did have a deputy prime minister, notable, right? And she was also the Minister of Public Safety. So Bill Blair's position, just to put you in the right frame of mind. Anyway, interesting, right? Interesting to have the deputy prime minister also be the finance minister. I don't think those two positions should be handled by the same person, nor do I think that the finance minister should be handled by somebody who has zero financial chops, but maybe that's credentialist of me. Here we go.
On September 23rd, Parliament will come back. On September 27th, legislation costing, $39 billion in total will be tabled, massive overhauls to EI. And I'm assuming you're going to put a gun to the opposition head again to get them to pass this quick with modified rules.
Well, thank you for the question, David. And let me first say, I do not believe that putting forward legislation in Parliament should be referred to. I would never refer to it using militaristic metaphors.
Of course, a really democratic approach would have put legislation before the House for MPs to do that this week. Instead, your government chose to prorogue and eliminating what would have been a good month of healthy debate and discussion by all MPs. Let me ask you a question as the finance minister now. Again, contempt for Parliament by not putting forward a budget for this year before the House. Will you commit to putting a budget before the House before the October 31st and allow that budget be debated in its normal, fulsome manner and be examined by committees? Can you commit to that?
So, David, I have been finance minister for less than 49 hours. And so I am not going to make any grand policy pronouncements today. Canada's economic performance.
So I want to talk about that. If you're the finance minister, and I was just saying that you shouldn't really take on more than you can chew, and understanding the job of deputy PM would be understanding that that's a big job that takes up most of your time, and understanding the job of being finance minister and understanding that that's a job that takes up most of your time. Can't do both, right? So I think that it's interesting that she dodges the question by saying, I've only been finance minister for 49 hours, and I'm not going to make any grand proclamations today. Is it a grand proclamation to confirm that we're going to have debate in the House of Commons about the budget? That's kind of standard practice, isn't it? And he was saying contempt in the House for not delivering a budget for this sitting of Parliament. Yeah, that's a problem. You can't just not deliver a budget, but that's what these Liberals did, right? Now they're proroguing, and because they want to hit reset on the we debacle, and we're going to touch on the we debacle. We're going to look at a bit of we. She talks about we, and she talks about the economy and some other things. We'll get into that. But fundamentally, I think that this is a bad excuse. You can't just say, like, come to the conference prepared to answer questions. You've been briefed by the Prime Minister. You've been the Deputy Prime Minister. You know what's going on. I don't know. The finance hat seems a little bit big for this head.
During the economic crisis caused by the coronavirus has been very strong relative to our peers. And that strength has been because Canadians have been great by flattening the curve, by doing the right thing on the coronavirus. We have actually reaped the economic benefit.
The economic benefit, as I was just saying, of a $400 billion deficit and $1 trillion debt. The economic benefit? Comparing ourselves to ourselves just in January, that's not great. Finance Minister, that's not great. And flattening the curve. Hold on, I'm going to show you something. Here's the Ontario stage openings. Okay? And if you see that, not one stage opening had a meaningful uptick. Not one. The most infectious disease ever, asymptomatic spread, 2 feet to 6 meters to stop the spread, whatever it was. All the slogany symptoms, or all the slogany slogans and repeat after me's and sing-alongs and healthcare heroes and all this other stuff. It looks exactly like all the other graphs in all the world. And we've got 15 in ICU in Ontario. And we're still locked down by government mandate for fear of the vaccine. The amount of people who are fearful of this is incredible, and it's all media driven. So it's very interesting talking about how great Canada is, and we flattened the curve, and we did all this stuff. I don't know how meaningful it is when we're $400 billion in debt, right? And more, our deficit and debt being a $1 trillion debt, $400 billion deficit, to be clear. Back to Chrystia Freeland.
Order to be able to fight the coronavirus effectively, we've done something really, really paradoxical. We have asked Canadian workers to stay home, and we have asked Canadian businesses to close their doors. Our government, yes, has taken on more debt so that Canadians didn't have to take on more debt.
So who pays the taxes to the government of Canada? Is that not Canadians? So I'm just not sure that she understands, really, the gravity of the position of finance minister. And if she does, she's not relaying that very well in her press conference. Okay, here is Pierre Poilievre, and he says, another day, another $37 billion. With no plan to let businesses hire again, Liberals believe they can forever replace people's paychecks with game board money printed by the Bank of Canada. Let's remove job-killing taxes, clawbacks, and red tape so people get jobs and paychecks. Yes, and here's something that I thought. Wall Street Journal says, meet Canada's Minister of Everything. And it's certainly not Justin Trudeau. He's not the Minister of Everything. He's the minister at the cottage. This is Toronto. It says, while the U.S. prepares for its election, Canada's government has been changing. On Tuesday, Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland assumed a second post as Finance Minister. Having earlier served as Minister of International Trade and Minister of International Affairs, she's sometimes called Minister of Everything in my country. Several finance ministers have gone on to serve as Prime Minister, and she could eventually succeed Justin Trudeau in that role. Like tomorrow? Soon, are you thinking? Do you have some inside information, Wall Street Journal? Here's Evan Solomon talking about credentialism. How dare people demand that somebody be actually capable of doing the jobs that they're doing in our government? Don't we employ them? We all elected Justin Trudeau to decide who is best, but does he understand how big a job Finance Minister and Deputy Prime Minister, when the Prime Minister is Justin Trudeau, is? Right? It's basically 2 full-time jobs, right? It's not like they're sharing the Prime Minister's role 50-50, I would say. Justin, say this, and then, you can go back inside to your cottage. Do you have a tanning bed in there? Credentialism, says Evan Solomon. People are unfairly questioning Chrystia Freeland's credentials. Evan Solomon highlights the credentials, or lack thereof, that other politicians have. That's not better. Chrystia Freeland should be not bothered about her credentials, because look at how unqualified these people are. You can't be upset about this. These people have no clue. It's silly. I didn't listen to the piece. I'm pointing out the link. Link is in the description if you want to listen to it. I'm poking fun because I think that it is not beyond the pale to ask for, some credentials from your finance minister. I think that it's okay to be upset about the fact that she has zero credentials in the finance sector. And finance it's not something you pick up. Like, have you ever picked up a Nintendo game and like played against an 8-year-old and then they absolutely destroy you? And then I don't know what the other side of that is. I remember being 8 and destroying my dad, and I only got worse at the games. So I don't know. I think that having credentials and experience, right? And like hands-on experience at the moment, you're up to date, you're doing it, is important in a role like finance. If you walk in, you're like, hey guys, I love money. Where do we start? Let's turn on the taps. Let's open the taps. I've read that in the paper. How do you do that? Okay, moving on. Here's a Financial Post. She said, Diane Francis, this is an opinion piece. Trudeau's autocratic proclivities, a clear and present danger to Canadian democracy. With Bill Morneau turfed, there are no adults left in the room, which is terrifying given Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's autocratic proclivity. This week, Trudeau, in a move that would have made Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban proud, jettisoned his finance minister to distract from a scandal, then shuttered Parliament for a month to halt investigations into his government's corrupt policy or practices. He then announced that a cabinet retreat would be held to chart Canada's economic course by September 23rd. This is the chart. No, going the wrong way. That's the core. Okay, that's it. Okay. Sorry. He then announced the cabinet retreat 23rd, given his inept crew foretells serious trouble for the Canadian economy. Trudeau is not a full-blown autocrat, but a small-time version. He has breached the Conflict of Interest Act twice and has allegedly done it again with the We Charity giveaway. His family has benefited from entities doing business with the government. He has orchestrated cover-ups, misled the press, flouted the rule of law by pushing out an attorney general to get criminal charges dropped against SNC-Lavalin, hobbled businesses with needless regulation, handed out government contracts to his liberal friends, botched foreign policy, and gone overboard with his climate alarmism. He represents a clear and present danger to Canadian democracy, especially because he lucked out last year when the election removed his majority but guaranteed his tenure unless all 3 opposition parties rose up to defeat him. They must do this when Parliament resumes on September 23rd. Tragically, the opposition's weak link, both in terms of economic smarts and political standing, is the NDP, which won a mere 15% of the popular vote but holds the balance of power. Heavily indebted and down in the polls, the party can be easily co-opted as part of Trudeau's new roadmap for Canada by throwing billions of dollars into the NDP's unaffordable national drug and dental schemes, not to mention wealth tax. Gotta pay for it somehow. Back to this. This is what oligarchs do. They capture the state, then distribute its funds to advance their own interests. A greater threat is the potential adoption of the loopy recommendations put forth this summer by Trudeau's task force for a resilient recovery. It was created as a vehicle to further the anti-business agenda of Trudeau's former chief of staff, Gerald Butts, who left his post for helping push out the Attorney General to help SNC-Lavalin. Now he's back in business with a hand-picked task force that is a grab bag of professional liberals, green activists, former civil servants, and self-described social entrepreneurs whose business models are all about getting grants and subsidies. Not a single business person was included on the list of task force members that I saw a few months ago. Their recommendations would bankrupt the country. They include $27.5 billion to build energy-efficient buildings, $49.9 billion to retrofit existing buildings, and a pledge to jumpstart production and adoption of electric vehicles, which does not include a price tag but is sure to be a hefty one. When mixed with Trudeau's continuing assault on Canada's only engine of economic growth, the oil and resource sectors, the outcome is a foregone conclusion. Canadian taxpayers, who already pay some of the highest taxes in the world, will crumble or flee along with their investors and employers. On top of that, Trudeau also wants a guaranteed annual income, which will turn us into a nation of trust fund kids and tank the economy. This is the Trudeau Trajectory, and don't count on our new finance minister, Chrystia Freeland, and her budget whisperer, Mark Carney, to save us. Freeland chaired the committee that approved the unjustified allocation to We Charity, and Carney is a radical environmentalist who's seconded to the United Nations to badmouth the resource base that underpins Canadian living standards. This is what autocrats and oligarchs do. They despoil democracies and free enterprise. Be warned. Very interesting. Moving into We, and I'm concerned that this is exactly the trajectory we're headed down, right? Moving into We, documents suggest Bill Morneau's office played a key role in We decision, because as much as this government would like We to go away, I don't think it's going to go away. I think if this government doesn't fall on the 15th, the NDP, or on the 23rd or the 24th when the government comes back, then the NDP are going to have some explaining to do, but only if their base demands it. Here it is. Yep. Thousands of pages of documents are shedding new lights on how the office of former finance minister Bill Morneau played a central role in the government's decision to award the now canceled multi-million-dollar contract to We Charity. The 5,000 pages of documents released Tuesday to members of the House of Commons Finance Committee include dozens of emails and memos from Morneau's office in relation to the $912 million student volunteer program. The emails from April show public servants from Morneau's office pushing the idea of We Charity's involvement in administering the area and portray a friendly relationship, between Morneau and co-founders of We Charity, Craig and Mark Kielburger, that was so close Morneau's department referred to them as besties. They include 3 emails that Craig Kielburger sent directly to Morneau on April 10th, April 22nd, and April 26th, in which he addressed the former minister by his first name. The controversy over the now canceled program has spawned investigations by the federal ethics watchdog into possible conflict of interest on the part of the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, whose family has received over $500,000 in speaking fees and reimbursements from We Charity and Morneau. The former minister and his family previously accepted trips, which were later repaid to visit We Charity projects in Ecuador and Kenya, and his daughter works for the charity. I like how they put in later repaid. Like the day he was set to testify, the day he got caught, he paid for it and then resigned. Okay, Trudeau and Morneau have both apologized for not recusing themselves from the government's decision to award the We Charity contract. Global News reached out to Ministry of Finance for comment with a list of questions about the emails and communications between Morneau's office and Craig Kielburger, and did not receive a response at the time of publication. We Charity has maintained that it would not have profited from the agreement, and Craig Kielburger testified last month that they would never have taken the call from the civil servant if they'd known how controversial the program would be. The charity said in a statement that the CSSG was awarded on merit and was first approached by the Trudeau government on April 19th. And this is just a rehashing of the rest of it. I scroll down. Oh, goodness, I've got lots more. I didn't think I'd highlighted as much. By April 18th, Morneau said he had been advised that a partnership with a third party might be needed to help deliver the massive program, and that We was raised as an option. Quote, "This was the first time that I'd been involved with any discussion related to We Charity and what would become the CSSG," Morneau told the parliamentary committee. Morneau said he verbally approved the grant program on April 21st, but said that We hadn't been chosen at that point. The newly released documents show that on April 22nd, Craig Kielburger emailed both Chagar and Morneau at 11:30 a.m. In his email to Chagar, Craig Kielburger thanked her for listening to the proposal during the April 17th meeting and said We had began to rework the proposal to fit the national volunteer program the government was planning. "Hi, Minister Chagar. Thank you for your time Friday. We greatly appreciate your so kindly listening to our proposal. We appreciate your thoughtful offer to connect us with relevant ministers to your ministry," he wrote in an email which included the proposal with new options. "Our weekend team has also been hard at work to adapt your suggestion of a second stream focused on the summer service opportunity." Chagar said in a statement to Global News that she never told We Charity to adjust their proposal on this April 17th call. So this is just showing 2 ministers lied under oath. Right? And they said one thing when the opposite is clearly true. Back to this. "As the minister responsible for the Canadian Service Corps, I spoke about the importance of youth services. I at no time directed We Charity to amend or adjust or add any proposal," Chagar said. "Furthermore, I did not speak about the Canadian Student Service Grant, as I was not aware of plans for such a program at the time." Kielburger's email to Morneau included the same proposal related to conversations to provide a national program to support young people during the COVID-19 crisis. "Hi, Bill. I hope you're doing well during times of enormous workload," Kielburger wrote, attached as a proposal that summarizes both options that We Charity can turn key to launch this summer with hundreds of support staff ready to deliver. A few days later, on Sunday, April 26th, Morneau called Craig Kielburger directly. Morneau had previously said neither of them talked about the Canada Student Service Grant program on the call. Craig Kielburger also testified that he only brought up the youth business proposal and not the grant program. During the call, Morneau did ask general questions about Mr. Kielburger's view of not-for-profit sector and youth. We Charity said in a statement there was no discussion of the CSSG program during this call. Believable? I don't know, considering the contradictory facts after the documents were released. So very, very interesting. Here's another one. The federal government watchdog has launched an investigation into 6 sole source government contracts awarded to the We organization since 2017. So things are not looking great for We. Here's Mark Barrett, I believe. Oh, Michael Barrett. Sorry, Michael. And he's talking about what is the Prime Minister hiding. This is about a minute. Here we go.
The Prime Minister made a big show yesterday that there'd be documents released. They're redacted. They're blacked out. There can be no order from committee to unredact them because he's locked the committee doors. At the Ethics Committee, today, members were to receive documents from the company that has brokered all of the speaking engagements for members of the Trudeau family since 2008. Today, we were to get those documents. Members of the committee will not, now that the Prime Minister has locked the doors and locked those documents away. So is there a pattern in this government, in the Trudeau Liberal government, between family members receiving lucrative speaking contracts and lucrative government contracts being awarded? Well, the Prime Minister has made sure that we're not able to find out for ourselves. Canadians should ask, what is the Prime Minister trying to hide? The phrase was coined.
Yeah, good question. I mean, we have a good idea, right? The corruption and all of that other stuff. Pierre Poilievre asks a good question. Who in the Trudeau government is under police investigation? Trudeau should tell Canadians. That would be nice, wouldn't it? Oh, here's that graph again as we were talking. We're going to get into a little bit of COVID-19 stuff. Here is the Liberal Party that says, I think Canadians understand the restart of our economy needs to be green. It also needs to be equitable, needs to be inclusive, and we need to be focused very much on jobs and growth. Deputy Prime Minister, look at the responses. The responses are very not friendly. It's very, very interesting. And not too many likes considering, well, I don't know historically about how many likes the Liberal Party Twitter gets, but it's interesting to note. This is what I was trying to focus on. Canadians are more. Justin Trudeau says Canadians are more focused on a plan to address health crisis than we are in the We scandal. Let's see if he's telling the truth. What are you more focused on? 96% out of 1,500 votes on Twitter says the We charity scandal is more important. It's interesting because the media has got this never-ending drumbeat. If you're looking on Twitter, there's a lot of people trying to further that conversation of, being worried about school starting, but a lot of people are just sick of it and they want things to go back to normal. A lot of the polls that I've seen want the teachers to go back to work. They want the kids to go back to school. They want everything opened up. Maybe I'm overstating it about everything opened up. That's me projecting. I want everything opened up. But I can't see the numbers and maybe this is why this chart is here. The numbers here in Ontario just don't justify the current lockdowns. The numbers don't. And if masks work and these numbers are continuing to decline and the deaths are continuing to decline and there's no spikes, what are we worried about? It's been, July and August, So it's very, and even going back, right? Since May, since the peak in April even, we haven't seen a big spike. People say, oh, that's because we've done such a good job. But the same curve is seen in places like Sweden, places that haven't had such a good job, right? It's very interesting that the government and the health recommendations don't seem to reflect those realities. Why? Why not? I don't get it. I do get it. Back to the last story for this morning. OPP Association watch press conference at 1 p.m. yesterday, August 20th. Today's the 21st. Announcing the hiring of 200 new OPP officers by Premier Ford, Solicitor General Jones, the OPP Commissioner, and OPPA President Jameson live or anytime later on same link, blah, blah, blah. Here it is. And I mean, good. I'm glad to see more police. I think that it's really interesting, the long conversations being had by city councils and middle managers of the province, etc., about defunding police. And there's city councils across Canada, across Ontario that I've seen that are having this conversation. News articles about it. News articles saying there's support for it. And I just don't see that. For all of the time growing up, the news was talking about making sure Toronto remains safe, hiring more officers, social policing, being out in the community, developing relationships with the community, putting officers in schools and making sure that kids knew how to connect with officers and that they weren't fearful of them, and they were humanized by being in schools. And now we're going the totally opposite way. We've demonized police officers and said the police officers are evil, bad people. But that at the same time, the rioters who are running around Portland, those people who represent Black Lives Matter, the Marxist ridiculous organization that's trying to tear down the family and tear down democracy and the West, basically. Those people are beyond, they're great, wonderful people. You know, they're just peaceful protesters, you hear. But police are awful, terrible people that shouldn't be influencing youth. It's really, really jarring. So good for Ford to fund the police, but it's time to call people out on their BS. If you're not a tax-paying citizen and you don't understand what it takes to maintain law and order in the country and how important law and order is in the country, then you need to get educated, right? Really. There's not one tax-paying homeowner in Guelph that wants the police defunded. And if they do want that, well, I would love to hear their reasoning. I can't imagine it would stand up to any kind of scrutiny. Law and order is an important thing. The rule of law is an important thing, especially in our society. And individual responsibility is an important thing. If you break a law, you should be held responsible for that, regardless of your circumstances. And are there outlier situations that should be considered? Sure. But should every situation be considered as an outlier situation? Right? No. And that's what's happening. Okay, that's enough for me. Thanks for watching, everybody. Sorry I'm not exactly on my usual time. Things happen. But I tried this morning. So thank you for watching. Check out CanadaPoly.com. Check out CanadaReport.co. And have a wonderful, wonderful